Hey everyone, P.O. Stewart here, and I'm back with yet another review today, somewhat of a marathon perhaps. But in any event, I will be reviewing this chonker. It's beautiful though. I mean, this cover is fabulous, I must say. The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. So, forgiving my thoughts may be somewhat convoluted in terms of how I express how I felt about this book. Um, It is a YA book, essentially. So let's start off with that for those of you who aren't aware. Samantha Shannon is an internationally known best-selling author. So most of you who read YA and certainly know a lot more about the genre than I do. I'm by no means someone who's read a lot of YA, especially YA fantasy, in my time, other than when I was much younger. Um, you will have a lot more potentially relevant insights than me. However, I am going to attempt to articulate what I felt about this book. And again, sometimes this is a book where it sat on my shelf for a long time. It was strictly, I admit, I don't normally do impulse buys. This was somewhat of an impulse buy. The cover was gorgeous. I had heard so many good things about Samantha Shannon. I wanted to start reading a bit more YA to help diversify my TBR. I figured she's an internationally best-selling author. I heard her prose. For those of you who know me, know how I feel about prose. Heard her prose is very strong. Somewhat elevated but yet accessible for the YA genre. So I was like, okay, and this sat on my shelf for, I'm going to say, certainly the better part of 2 years. I'd say is how long I've had it, a year or two. But finally, I did end up getting to it, and I'm glad that I did. Not everything worked for me, but overall, I did really enjoy my time with it. One of the things that attracted me to this book is that I had heard that the writing and her authorial voice was very similar to George R. Martin, and George R. Martin is one of my favorite fantasy authors of all time. Of course, her voice is not as explicit as George R. Martin's, and frankly, certainly much more progressive and forward thinking. Because this fantasy, I would consider this more feminist fantasy, which again I love. Um, but the themes, there's that contrast between contrast and compare between her and George R. Martin, in that there's a lot of themes in here which involve hope, but loss and grief, and but I think the difference here, I love the diversity in the characters. um, there was very much a purposeful intent to provide a diverse, culturally, ethnically diverse cast. Um, it has a lot of representation there, and I thought that was phenomenal. And I think we do have to acknowledge that in this world, Samantha Shannon created a society that's essentially free from a lot of the discriminations and prejudices and bigotry that plague our society. It doesn't mean that this book, that they're not problems in the society, because religious intolerance is one of the problems. So and there is some xenophobia towards people from the outside who are considered foreigners. But there is, for the most part, a lot in the society that she creates in the Priority Tree. It's largely free of a lot of the issues that we have, and there is some problems that and I mentioned the xenophobia, and I did. There was an element of sexism that I found in the book, but overall, there was certainly an attempt to make this, a book full of very diverse characters, very diverse cast in terms of, especially in terms of LGBTQ 2A plus, and BIPOC BIPOC representation. So I thought that was fantastic. So what is the book about? Well, one thing I think um, you will love about this book, for this is a generic aspect that most fantasy fans will love, is there's dragons. Okay, so just, and the cover, again, you got the big dragon wrapped around the tower, like, there's dragons. So automatically that's an in for a lot of us who love that classical fantasy mythological beast. um, so in this book, you have, essentially the good dragons, the bad dragons. You have the leaders of the fire-breathing dragons, called the Nameless One, and he's been um, trapped in an abyss for centuries, and of course, he wants to get out and wreak havoc on mankind. Then you have you know, the the good dragons, and they're in this book. They're like gods, and but they're not the fire breathing type. They channel various elemental powers, and and one of the things that you will love about this, a la George R. R. Martin, and a lot of the fantasy that is most popular when it comes in terms of dragons, is that there is a bond between dragons and humans, with these particular dragons, the ones that are more worship of gods, and there's dragon riders. So that is something that, of course, people love as a trope. So the book, again, I'm rambling here in terms of my feedback on this book, but I think let's talk about the characters. First, the characters, it's multi POV, so I should explain that up front as well. There's several POVs, four, really five main ones. The first one, Iad, she is basically someone who is undercover. She's working in the house of the Queen of Innis, who's called Sabran, and more on Sabran later. Um, she's there to essentially protect Sabran from the Nameless One that I mentioned, who is trying to be free from their prison and wreak chaos. The Nameless One is also trying to destroy Sabran's house. So Iad, forgive my pronunciations, she's trying to protect Sabran from this. And Now, secretly, Iet is a mage of the Priory, the titular eponymous Priory in the Priory of the Orange Tree, and she basically has sacrificed a lot to become this protector for Sabran. And she was my favorite character in the book, and I thought her POV was so well done. But that's it. So now we go to Sabran, who she's trying to protect. So she's the Queen of Innis, and her lineage has stretched back, for millennia. She's taking over in this really tumultuous time. All of her predecessors have died because they've managed to be assassinated, essentially. So you can imagine it's, things don't look great for her. She is very severe character, or it seems like on the outside, very severe, austere, very, very, seemingly non emotional, very, cerebral, but yeah, a bit cold. It seems like that's how she's presented initially, and there's reasons for that. She's struggling with certain things like the depression, and she's coping with loss, and of course she knows that there's looming threats. She you have to expect, obviously, she has to expect that someone's always trying to kill her, and as they've killed all of her predecessors. So that's always hanging over her head. So that definitely impacts her story. Then we have Tene, and again, forgive my pronunciation, Tene. She wants to be a dragon writer, with the good dragons, and that means the world to her. That's her big life aspiration. but she makes a mistake, which I can't get into, which would be a big spoiler, and that causes her to be disgraced and exiled essentially. But then after that, she discovers that there's a lot more going on. There's a lot more threats to the world than people are aware of, and so she, because she's a very brave character, she has to overcome her feeling of shame and guilt about being exiled, and overcome her pride. That's a big theme there, and try and put that towards saving others. Okay, so she's a very interesting character, probably my second favorite character in the book. Then we have Nicholas. So he is an alchemist. He was also exiled from Sabrin's court a long time ago. Um, he wants to get home, um, but to do that, he has to delve into some secrets, and he won't be allowed to come back. He has issues in that he's a coward, and when you're on a big quest that involves the necessities of bravery, that's tough. Um, he's also somewhat selfish. So his character is a very interesting character. But yeah, I think his POV would be one that a lot of readers would enjoy. His yearning for home, and the fact that he can't come back until he accomplishes his goals. Then we have Artila. He is someone who, his POV centers a lot along religion and his religious beliefs. He's also sent on a mission that is probably a mission of no return for, so he's probably not going to survive. He's been betrayed by his own people. So he's the last main POV, and all these five POVs fitting together, they're all very distinct. They come from different backgrounds, different religions, different cultures, but they all their stories all meet and link, and that's the big tie-in of the book, that all these characters come together. So this book, I have to say, you know, I loved the religious aspect. Samantha Shannon, she made three main religions, and all of these religions, you understand how they work, their intricacies. You understand how their inceptions. You understand why people believe in these religions. These religions are very believable, but they all have these threats to these religions that really ramps up the tension. The it's I would have to say that the prose again is really work for me. I really enjoy the writing. It is that blend of, and remember again, this is YA, so it was that blend of somewhat elevated yet accessible that really worked. I love the writing; it was beautiful. I really enjoyed my time there. It's there's an intent with language here, a real concern for language. Um, you know, I think that Samantha Shannon is a great writer, and her prose, as I said at the beginning of the review, her prose, or authoritative voice, it did somewhat remind me of George R. R. Martin. But if George R. R. Martin was writing A Song of Ice and Fire in more the YA style, it really did work. And the cleverness of this is that, again, there's these multiple POVs, these multiple narrative voices, and it takes a lot of skill to make all the voices sound distinct, and I thought that was fantastic. The characters are really well drawn. They deal with a lot of turmoil, but they grow, they learn. You know, there's some really great stuff in this book. I Again, speaking of Ian, my favorite character, they she was she was someone who I liked so much because um, of her altruism. And I think, you know, I saw what she was going through to protect Sabran, what she was sacrificing. And I really enjoyed that aspect and her relationship with Sabran, which evolves a lot over time. Um, this book, again, it there was so much to like about this book. It's really well drawn. It's feminist fantasy. If you like Naomi Nokovic, V. Schwab, that type of book, you would love it. I think it. I like the fact that with the multiple POVs, you do see different sides of essentially the same conflict. So you end up rooting for almost all the characters, regardless of what side of the conflict they're on. There's a lot of great political stuff, which I love. Um, you know, it's you know, the sapphic relationship that develops is great. There's so many things to like about this book. I am not sure why ultimately this wasn't complete 5 star, other than to say, and I know my tastes and I know what I like. If the one thing that maybe um, didn't click with me is that I felt sometimes it was a bit random in terms of where the plot was going, and sometimes it felt a bit disjointed to me, and that may be more just me. One thing about this book is that if you like to be kind of more thrown in the deep end, like there's no information dumps or anything like that. Here you're going to learn organically about all these different cultures, these religions, and that's great. But I guess for me, sometimes I could have used a bit more clues, a bit more prompts in certain directions, and that's just me. Again, this isn't this is my personal critique, but this book is fabulous. I do love the writing. I believe it's a duology, and I will be continuing the series. I think I'm not sure if the second book is out, but it's the Roots of Chaos series, and I do think there's a lot to love here, especially if, like me, you love again chonky epic fantasy, it's high fantasy. You like detailed world building. It's certainly here, and again, it's organic, so you learn it as you go along. You love great characterization. It is here, and you know I love that. So there was a lot to like here. Again, I think that you know, for whatever reasons, some things about the book didn't click as much as I'd hoped. But overall, still, I'm really glad I read it, and it was a great read. So the links to buy this book are in the video here that I made, so you can check it out. I will be moving on to book two. I mean, again, this cover is gorgeous, and the writing is fantastic, and the characterization is really good. And the other thing I should mention before I go is that it's very inspired. There's a lot of uh, real life legends on which that inspire this book. Especially one that really fascinates me and one that I love is the legend of Saint George and slaying the dragon. And without spoiling things, that plays huge in this book, and I love that aspect. And there's a lot more, but that's one that I really keyed in on. So. You know, it was a book that I really enjoyed. I do recommend it. It was a close to 4.5 stars for me. I will be continuing. I do want to read more YA. This is certainly something that I could read a long series of, and I'm only assuming it gets better as it goes on. Although I believe it may or may not be only a duology. So that's my review of Private the Orange Tree. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you do give the book a chance if it sounds like it's your bag. And yeah, well, maybe we might get one more review or two in today later on. But for now, I'm signing off. It's PL Stewart, and take care.